Hello, my name is Lisa, if we haven't met, and this is a Yin Yoga offering. When we talk about Yin, there's a broad context, but it is different than a lot of physical yoga practices, as we're working towards relaxation and softness, working to our connective tissue. So to do this practice of relaxation and revolution, of paying attention, you might decide that you want to have a bed pillow around. I have just standard bed pillow for my bed. If you have yoga blocks, they could be helpful. Stacks of books are also really helpful. I often sit up on the end of a big classic anatomy book, and that's a good lift for me. But for a lot of postures, we want to bring the earth to us so we feel supported. So you might even pause this video and take a moment to get what you need around you. If you have a regular yin practice and you know for sure you don't need any of this stuff, it's always okay not to use props. Some classicists believe that this practice is to be done without props. I think do it in a way that makes sense for your own healing and support, and especially keep in mind that this is a process-oriented practice as opposed to a product-oriented one. You might at the end feel a certain way or feel like, oh, that kink in my shoulder feels better, or, oh, I feel less tight, or I had some mental time to sit with this idea, etc., so on. But really, we're seeking to process things. We're seeking to practice something more cyclical, more process-oriented. So please do allow the practice to be that. Value the experience that you're having. Remember, it should always be kind, and you want to try to be true, as it were, to be real with yourself about what's going on and what you need. And the intention of this tool is to be accessible. So if you need to skip something, fast forward through it. If you need to turn off the video and do your own thing, if you need to use it in 10-minute increments as opposed to doing the whole time allotment, please do that and get creative with props, because I'm not in time and space with you. Unfortunately, I get necessarily see you and know that, like, oh, you definitely, might feel better if you have a lift, and I could suggest that, etc. So really take on that responsibility of self-care for yourself and get creative with what's around you so that you feel supported in your practice. Another option also is to do things for less time. If you find you need to move on from a pose sooner, that's also okay. Another way of working. All right. I like to begin the practice with resonant sound by uniting with 3 rounds of the seed sound of Om. I offer Om as a secular chant, acknowledging interconnection between all things. For any reason Oming or chanting isn't for you, feel free to sit with us in presence instead. Otherwise, you might close your eyes and rest your hands somewhere in relative neutral. Take a moment to arrive inside your body by sitting tall without becoming micromanagerial necessarily. Set your head in neutral and soften your face. It's always chill to sit with us in presence instead of oming or chanting. Maybe there's a sleeping family member in the next room, or for you it doesn't feel like it resonates appropriately, etc. To clear and prepare the energetic channel, to prepare for chanting Om, take an inhale in through your nose. And an open mouth exhale each day. Inhale, prepare for Om. Take a long inhale in through the nose and a slow exhale out. And today we're going to begin in a seated forward fold, right? Working from front body compression towards more back bending and twisting. So I suggest that for seated forward folding, you sit up on the edge of something. That might be a book or a block. You might choose a rolled up mat, etc. You might choose to sit on that pillow if you've grabbed it and bring that course to play. And sitting up is really a function of tilting the pelvis. So especially if you feel like on the ground your spine is rounded and it's tight back here, you feel a lot of pressure, you can sit up on something. You might be able to sit on the edge and kind of use it to tilt your pelvis. So it's more tilted, the top of it's turning forward and down. Now if it feels like that's not enough, you can also bend your knees, place props behind the knees to give yourself support so that you have a knee bend. You can even choose to bend your knees and put the soles of your feet on the ground to work into your lower back more. And then as you feel good about it, fold forward and down and come to hang your head into gravity. You might put a pillow between you lengthwise or horizontal wise, either to round over. Rounding is okay in yin as long as it feels good in your back, or to extend over. And extending should be soft and passive. So if you feel like you're really activating to extend, create more support. Hang your head or let it be supported. I'll often demonstrate the entrance to the posture and then come out so I can keep time and speak to you. Once you're in, let yourself settle in. And we'll talk a little bit about the context of the practice. So yin really refers to yin and yang, which is a duality that in this case, in many ways, has been reappropriated from traditional Chinese medicine. And some of the folks who work in yin are really connected to that study. They have teachers and backgrounds in it, in acupuncture, acupressure, etc. And some folks have less and are utilizing these contexts sort of to fill out a kind of missing half of our more Ayurvedic yoga. Or we often sort of miss the lunar half, the more reflective, quiet half. And usually we sort of come to the conclusion that the likelihood is information about that was more pushed underground. It was more subversive. And so when other cultures came to play, that information really got hidden and maybe lost. And so using this yin quality of traditional Chinese medicine gives us a way to think about duality and non-duality. Yin and yang, usually thought of as two inseparable dualities. You might think of that symbol that you've probably seen. Maybe if you're old enough, you had a pair of jeans with a patch on them. That white and black symbol that curls, the teardrops loop around each other. And there's always a dot of white and black inside of the oppositional forces because yin and yang are inseparable. And when we practice yin, yang will be with us. Yang is what is fiery, active, moving, external, muscular, energized, solar. Sometimes the quality of dominant culture has been qualified as more yang. Yang tends to be about productivity, busyness, tends to be our more goal-oriented self. And yin offers us an oppositional point of view. It's what's more quiet and internal and subversive, more reflective and receptive, the shady side of the mountain, the dark side of the moon. Things are slow and cool and dense and structured, etc. And so when we turn towards what is yin, we're already turning away often from the cultural affect that we've been raised in or that we've been sort of shown is valuable by the world, whether we felt like we identified with it or not. And first and foremost, you might just turn your attitude in that way to what is more reflective, to what is being revealed to you, letting yourself, instead of an active exploration, a passive exploration, a passive ability to be with what is. And then we use three major guidelines or tattvas. I use Bernie Clark's tattvas because I've trained with him, but there are other contexts to think about this as well. And these are just, tattva really just means quality or truth or aspect. And so we use these as pragmatics to give us a context for the practice so that we don't have to organize so much in the yang world of decision making and action. We can be more yin. And so these three tattvas are structured edge or pertinent edge. Really, the edge is not the precipice edge of the mountain, the deepest you can survive. Instead, the edge is way pulled back. It's like 30 to 60, 70% of what your yang or active edge might be. You want to be able to set your body in the shape the way you would fold a sweater, right? If there's too much tension, the sweater will unfold, right? If it's too tight. So we want a loose folding, as it were, of the body. And we're always setting ourselves in a way that we can be soft. So you might use props to prop yourself up wherever that soft edge might be. A little bit of pressure. side of kindness and gentleness and ease. And since we're in our poses for duration, you really can set yourself up at a more soft place. If you start to feel activation or it starts to feel intense, you might adjudicate whether that's the shape you really need to be in. And over time in this practice, you may learn ideas about where the edge kind of is for you. So if it's new to you, give yourself time and space to adjust. And the second tattva is stillness. By sustaining stillness, we allow our yin tissues, our bones, joints, myofascia to remain in depth in the postures. If you're fidgety like me and you're constantly moving around when things are uncomfortable, you might try sitting with those impulses for movement for 3 or 5 rounds of breath before you discern whether this is like necessary action or distractionary action that's coming up. Your third tattva is time. We sustain in the edge and stillness over the course of time. I keep time here on my phone. You're about halfway through your hold in this first posture. I'll usually give you halfway marks, final minute marks, because depth is really created by time and the connective tissue and the fascia of the body here. So if you feel like resiliency is telling you, yes, there's a minute left, I'm good, I can stay here, that might be what you check in with. You might find that that timeline has to change. You need to back away, or maybe props need moved for more ease and space to be created. Those are good times to check in if you're not already checking in on your own timeline. So give yourself permission. I'll try to hold as much as I can of that structure so that you can be with your practice. Otherwise, allowing yourself to have your experience without judgment, without hierarchy. I've been talking this week about revelation. I think the idea of revelation really allows us to see not that change is coming or that change needs to be created, but in fact that change was already here, right? That the need was already present for change in ourselves, our culture, and our lives, etc. And that really now revelation is the bringing to light, the bringing to community, the bringing to air the truths of experiences that are already present. You might consider this in the individual level with yourself. What is being revealed? Right? What revelation are you coming to? And that's not to tie it up in a bow and make a cap around it. Maybe what you're being revealed in your body is that your back is uncomfortable in the shape that you're in. It needs to change, right? It can be very pragmatic, right? But notice that the practice of the poses is not what we're doing, right? It's instead how we're doing what we're doing, that we're practicing. Are you allowing yourself to receive? Are you allowing things to be revealed? Are you being compassionate with yourself when difficult realities are brought to light? Bringing things to light could be seen maybe as a kind act as opposed to one of violence. You're approaching your final minute in this first posture. Notice if you need to adjust, if you need more support, maybe you need less. Remember that in Yin, there's no rush, right? There's no timeline. Rush is really the idea that your money and your time have equal value, that you should be rushing because there's more quantity to be gained in the time you're in. So instead, this is process oriented. There's no more or less. There just is what there is. So start to slowly, over 6, 7 slow rounds of breath, transition out of your hold in this pose. You might start by slowly rolling yourself up, fold it down. You might take the legs out long in front and drop them from side to side, or bend the knees and place the soles of the feet down to windshield wiper. And also take your heart up and lean your head back like you're showing your face to the sun, a little counteraction to the backward bending. And we're going to do an upright twist, which we don't do super frequently. You can sit up on something once again if you'd like. Take your left leg out long. And again, you might put something underneath it, just as you did in the last posture, and step your right foot to the outside of your left knee. Now, this twist is yin. It looks a lot like yang twist, so try not to be super extreme. Find the balance of softness while twisting to the right. So you can take your right hand behind you. You might take your left arm across your right knee. It really depends on the range of motion, the length of your bones, how your joints are structured. And turn your head back. Try to relax as much as you can. And once you're inside the shape, we'll hold for time. And you're always welcome to different versions to cultivate sustainability in other ways. So much of my early education in yoga was always about learning how to press further and do more, which I think was really a lot of the cultural affect of work with the body and quote unquote fitness, as it were, that existed at the time. I think we can liberate ourselves from that idea that more of it is better, more depth is better, being able to survive more trauma of depth is better, etc., so on. See if instead, in the yin practice, you can be subversive by paying attention to what is, as opposed to constantly undermining what is by a striving for what seems to be more. Have your experience by paying attention fully, feeling fully in your body. And there's a lot of silence in this practice. I'll fall silent for poses at a time, minutes at a time. Know that that's intended. And always apply your own breath. Know that if you find discomfort in this practice, you're not alone. You're not necessarily doing anything wrong. You might want to back up a little bit, the depth, the intensity. There might still be discomfort. Discomfort is sometimes just a sign of the body changing and growing. Be kind where you can. And this is your halfway mark in this hold. Final minute. With great kindness, over the next 5 to 10 rounds of slow breath, begin to unwind. You might really take it one increment at a time. You can do a counter unwinding by taking your hands over to the left and kind of leaning onto your left hip and folding down if you like. You can counteract in any way you wish. Sometimes there's a desire to kind of shake off the feeling of the pose, and you're in your body, so you know what to do, but know that we're not necessarily trying to let go of all the work we just did. Instead, just counter it and be with it. A lot of the benefit of our physical practice on the body occurs upon release. So take your time. Stillness might really be what's for you. I'm coming down off of this block because in my anatomy, the next pose asks me to, but you might stay up on it, another seated forward fold before we, in fact, twist the other way. I'm going to do the long-winged butterfly. Some people know this like Baddha close to your groin. We're doing a longer form. And for some people, it can be really good to catch your knees, to use blocks or books underneath your outer knees or hips, wherever it feels comfortable. That can be a different place for different people. And you might catch pillow to come down and fold over, hang your head, or drop a block underneath your forehead. Some people will be in a more upright stance, and you might utilize the lower arms like stilts to catch the head, etc. You might choose to do this posture from an upright point of view or lying on your back, right? If you're a person who is pregnant or a person who is menstruating right now, it might feel better to lie on your back as well. And feel free to do this version with the legs in support. All right, and we'll stay for time in this pose too. Some longer holds so that we have the time to be with what is revealed. We have the time to be with what is reflected back to us in our experience. And remember that revelation sometimes doesn't come in the form of questions being answered, and in fact of questions emerging. I don't really have any answers for you about how to be a human being. I don't know any better than you do. But I do have a lot of formats to ask questions about it. We'll consider how questioning can be kind, how the disruption and sometimes destruction that questioning brings forth can be an act of love and peace, can clear space for what is manifesting and growing. I may have mentioned my dog Albert often hangs out while I record and when I practice, and he sometimes walks through the shot like that. Wants to make sure you know he supports you in your yoga practice. You're about halfway through your hold in this pose. You're approaching your final minute in this hold. Consider if more support is required, or maybe more space is required. What is being revealed? With great softness, begin to slowly release your posture. You might let your head hang and use your hands to support you. Please take your time and feel fully along the way. You might discern that you need to move props off to the side. And again, you might lean your head back. You might take your legs from side to side, or sometimes out long, just rolling the ankles or using your hands to roll your thighs in and out can feel nice. Once you feel relatively released, let's come into the opposite side of our action of twisting. So you might have your right leg out long. I like to put the block underneath just so the back of my knee doesn't take pressure. And you are welcome to have your knee straight out or folded in another way. Step your left foot to the outside edge and twist to the left. And you're welcome to hook the arm. Your arm might not hook without a bunch of effort, and then you might choose not to hook it over. You might gaze to the left. Hugging around your leg is another good alternative. You can also kind of fold and slunch down if you like. We've been taught the pranic twist, or twists where we're extending our spine a lot, are the only safe or good ones. Actually, a lot of classical yogic twists are aponic, more rounded. And it's okay for things to be more rounded as long as there is no pain. That's part of our range of motion as well. Things might be the same from side to side. Remember that symmetry is an aesthetic as opposed to a natural idea, and it's never perfect. And it's okay for things to be different from side to side in your body. You're about halfway through your time on this side. Notice what is being revealed. Final minute. Good, and very slowly, without rushing over the next few breaths, start to unwind your posture. And again, you might stop along the stages of time to really take your time to notice. And again, you might find that action is really what is required for you. We're going to do a little bit of work into our hips and knees. So be really kind to your knees. I'm going to start with the dragon posture. So I'm going to show it to you from the side and then come at it from the front so I can show you some modifications. And we'll start in a hands and knees position so you can take your time getting there. When you find the hands and knees position, if you find already your knees are feeling kind of tender, you might fold up the mat or use the bolster or another blanket or so underneath your knees. And then you're going to step your right foot up and out. So it can be like this, where you have 90-degree bend in both knees about, where you might find that coming forward and down like this, like you're getting ready to run a race, is where you want to work. You can stay at this height or you can come down. Some of you might go up into a backward bend or into half splits at some point. We are going to go through a little bit of half splitting and some work into the front of the quad. Every once in a while, there's somebody who feels a lot of pressure in their front hip. You might step that front foot forward and actually stack up your blocks so your hip itself has a little bit of leverage, or a high stack of books will do as well. And you can stay upright and breathe. You can come forward and down to hands or forearms and stay. All right. This posture for some can be greatly relieving and for some can be a lot of pressure. And so if that's you, be kind to yourself. Won't be here for a super duper long hold, but we will be here for time. You can stay where you're at, breathe as you need to. Know that in some yin postures, there's a quality of yang that seems stronger. We're like, how could I do this without doing some muscular action or having some support? That might be true for you. Notice where the edge is between yin and yang, where the dualities meet. How soft can you be? You're already about halfway through your time in this pose. You're here in your final minute. Very compassionately, you lower down, start to lift up. If you draw your right foot real wide for this, you might draw it back into center. We're going to take the half split. So you can straighten your right leg. I like to place lifts underneath my leg so that once again, there's a little release for my knee. Your knee can be quite bent and fold forward over it. Do your best to keep your hips relatively stacked over your left knee so that we're working through the hamstring, that you might need to sway your hips back a little bit further. Just about 2 minutes here. If you're one of my friends who has more splitting space and you'd like to go further forward and it can stay in the yin realm, it's okay to do the splits. But remember, is it okay to do the splits? Is it yin to do the splits in your body? Consider where that range of motion actually is. Efficiency is often what we're looking for as opposed to survival. Just about 1 more minute here. All right, very slowly press yourself up. If you straightened out your leg a lot, you might bend it a little and twist a little from side to side. You're going to move into half saddle pose, which is like half virasana if you have an active practice. So start to bend into your left knee and walk your hips back. We're going to try to sit down inside of the left foot. So I'm going to turn a little so you can see what I'm saying. Folded the knee. Now for some people, this knee bend is going to feel great. Some of us are going to need to stack up props so that our knee doesn't feel super wonky. You might also pad under the ankle. Sometimes it feels bony at the top of the foot. Now you might work in this upright stance right here. Some people will fold forward over this shape. If that feels good for you, you can with support. Some of you will go backward. Sometimes we don't need the block, right? And if you don't, it's okay to sit your tuchus on the ground. It's pretty normal for your body to kind of skew to the right. You can do a little bit of management back towards center, but try not to over manage anything. If you're going backwards, you might even set up your pillow or your cushion to catch you as you come down onto the back of your body. And you can always catch your head with additional props, etc., so on. You're always welcome to stay more upright. If you want to lean back and you think you need a little bit more support, you could stack up 3 or 4 cushions. You could also use a chair. Sometimes the seat of a chair, the seat of a bench is really the height that we need to lean over, forward, or backward. And then we're staying in the posture for a few minutes. Remember, it's never that you're trapped or stuck. You can always release the pose at any time or soften out of it a little at any time. Make it sustainable for you. You're about halfway through your time here. Good. And final minute. Very slowly, in your own timing, with great compassion, start to slide yourself up. You're already upright. You might stay there. If you were folded forward, you can slowly slide up. And I like to roll off to the right side and take the left leg out long. You might roll it in and out a few times. Right? This is not the position we came from. It might be an interesting way to move. And then as you're ready, we'll come into the opposite side of this action. So I'm going to start with hands and knees position, and I'm going to pad my knees again to come into the lizard lunge. Or lizard lunging, step your left foot forward and maybe to the outside of your left hand. And you can stay upright. You can roll to the blade of your foot. Just be mindful it's not all in the ankle and knee, that turns your hip out. You're welcome to turn your foot out. Some of you will put blocks underneath this front hip to support compression out of the pinch in the front crease. You can stay on your hands or come to forearms. You're really welcome to any version or variation. I think dragon is a more accurate way to describe this kind of pose than lizard, simply because there's a fierceness, right? Also, sometimes there's an element with dragons of attachment, right? If we want comfort to exist, we want to hoard what we have and be attached. At least that's what I've been told about dragon energy. But, consider, right? What do we want to hold on to? What jewels do we want to collect? And what do we not need anymore? What is being revealed to us about our desire for comfort, our need for resiliency? Remember to listen to yourself far more than you listen to me. Choose a different version. Consider that there's effect on the body in a lot of these postures, but we want soft and kind effect. You're about halfway through your time in this posture. Final minute. Very gently press yourself up for the next 5 or 6 slow breaths. Take your time to feel. We're headed towards that half Hanuman or half split action. You might walk your left foot back to the center line. I'm going to turn my orientation a little to show this shape. And as you shift your hips back, it's okay to be a little further back, a little further forward. Totally okay to keep your knee bent. Flexing the ankle isn't even necessarily required in yin as you fold over. And if you find you need lift, remember you can create lift however you need it along the structure so that you can fold down. And occasionally someone will come into a more splitty split, and if that feels good for you, feel free. We'll be here for about 2 minutes. I think it's important to remember that doing the splits doesn't make you better at life. They don't pay more at work. And so when you see someone doing it, whether they believe that or not, remember your work is your own, not theirs. Their work is their own, not yours. And there's diversity to be celebrated on all ends. Right? Your body has structure where it needs it, space where it needs it. And we're doing that balance work within our own networks. And it's also okay to be somebody who splits. There are bodies that have space, and let's not erase them as well. Right? Let's let all the bodies do the yoga. Let all the ways be powerful. And very slowly begin to release this posture, bend into that left knee. And I come into the half saddle pose on this side. So you might walk yourself back to sit your hips down on the inside of your right heel. You might create props behind you or in front of you to catch your body. Be mindful with your knee. Sometimes folding forward puts more pressure on the knee. Sitting up on a block or a cushion is really helpful if the knee bend is a lot. You can even pad behind your knee if you have knee issues. You know your knee doesn't want to fold past 90 degrees because of an injury. Certainly don't do this posture. Pick another. Um, or repeat the first side. Sometimes that is a way of working. Remember, evenness is different than balance, just like equity is different than equality. As you choose your variety of posture, know that we'll be in the pose for just a few minutes. Halfway through your time on this side in this pose. Final minute. Very gently begin to release your posture. You might come up slow. You are welcome to release the way you did on the opposite side, or you might release in an alternative fashion by bending your front knee, coming back to the hands and knees position, and letting your hips shift from side to side. Going to work into the Sphinx pose next. So for Sphinx posture, you might pad the hips, or you might utilize a cushion underneath your upper body. I'm not going to be here as long as sometimes we hold this pose. So coming forward and down, I like to use a prop under my ribs. You might not. You might use a softer prop than a block, like a pillow, a folded up sweatshirt. You might find that having your elbows under your arms is already enough lift. Some people feel upright too much pressure in the lower back or the middle back or difficulty breathing. And if that's you, you might widen your hands out and come lower, bringing your head down or your forehead down. You might also walk your arms more forward with structure beneath so you can hang your head. You can hang your head or set postural blocks or books underneath to catch it. Some people have neck issues and like to keep the head upright. Whatever version of the Sphinx you choose, settle in. Be here for about 4 minutes. Sometimes when we pressurize the lower back, the glutes and the hamstrings, the muscles at the back of the pelvis and legs try to turn on and activate. You might ask them to soften. If you know your body has more space and you're looking for more strengthening and density in the connective tissue of your lower back, you might bend your knees. And it feels like too much, it's straining you, then you know the edge has been crossed. And the edge is different from body to body. Some of you might even take seal pose, coming up onto blocks with the forearms or coming up to the hands. Halfway. Final minute. And gently, over the course of time, release your posture. You can come down with the upper body, remove any props off to the side, bring one ear to the mat or the forehead onto the hands. If you feel like you need to, you might wag your dog tail from side to side, bend the knees and windshield wiper from side to side, releasing tension in the lower back through twisting. One last belly down posture. We'll do it on each side. Crocodile. Take your right arm out to the right, thumb about the same height as your nose. It can be more back towards the hips or more up towards the crown of the head, depending on your shoulder joint shape. You roll to the right side of the body. You can stack your legs or bend your left knee and hang it over. Some people will bend their knees and stack them like you're watching a movie. Hang your head. You can always use a prop to catch it or a hand. Just a few minutes here. Some of you weight bear in the upper body, but a lot of us don't in the same way we do as the lower body. So the connective tissue responds over less time, right? Because there's less to unravel and unwind. Not always true, but notice that intensity or pressure might show up sooner in the upper body. Good. Slowly release. Use your left hand to support you as you roll onto the front seam of your body. We'll work into the opposite side. Take your left arm out to the left. Roll to the left side. And again, you can stack or stagger. Drop your top leg behind. Relax your head. Be real kind to yourself. If you don't need your right arm for stability, you might drape it back behind you. Consider less about making the pose and more about using the pose to get into yourself. How are you feeling? What do you notice? In general, yoga is a low stakes practice for a high stakes life, high stakes world. So take the time to let yourself be inside of a context where you can hold power. And hold it so you can distribute it. When I talk about power, I don't mean power over others. I mean self-sovereignty, self-empowerment. The idea that you have the power to create and destroy inside of your own context. Good. And over the next 5 or 10 breaths, release this side. Use your right hand to roll back onto your front seam. You might take a moment, open and close your hands, let the blood flow back into your arms, and come up to a seat. So for our last posture before rest, we're actually going to take the camel pose. Now, we don't often practice camel pose because it's hard to support and to stay over a long period of time. It's going to be a little bit of yang for our yin work, and it's the buck moon, the antler moon. This full time of the moon season can be a time to sit with our intensity. So I'll say this, we'll do it for 15 breaths. And by that I mean you might stay in camel for 5 breaths and then come out to sit like this or to rest in child's pose for 10 breaths. You might stay for 3 and come out to rest for 12. You might stay in for 8 or 10 breaths and then come out to rest for 5. I will let you know when each 5 breath count is passed, at least in my relative timing. But remember to be kind to yourself. I guess it would be accurate to say that sometimes backbending can be triggering. It can make you feel a lot of fight or flight. It can bring up things that have been hidden and reveal them. And if that feels like too much, then back off. Only do as much as feels right, which might be none at all. I'll offer an alternative as well to full camel, which I call baby camel. You can bring your hands interwoven at the base of your neck and lift your chest up, hang your head back, stick out your tail, and breathe right here. You can also do this way or with your hands on your hips if your shoulders feel like too much. Otherwise, to come to camel pose, rise to standing on your knees and feel free to pad the knees if you like. Bring your hands to your lower back, press your hips forward, and hang your head back. You can have pinkies in, thumbs out. I like wrists in, fingers out. If it's in your range of motion to come to your heels, one hand at a time, you're welcome. Breathing. That's 5 breaths in. That's 10. If you're not already resting, find your way to rest in a seat or in a child's pose. And that's 15. If you need to rest as you are longer, do. Otherwise, slowly make your way onto your back for resting. And alternatively, rest on your side or your belly. Or if you feel like you need a little counteraction, take your legs up the wall or put a little lift behind your knees so there's some inversion of your lower body above your upper body. And come to lie down in a way of resting that makes sense for you. Now, if you need to pause the video and do a few more things to resolve your practice, do. If you need to come into another type of resting shape or come over to maybe a cushioning couch or a bed, or you need to grab an extra layer and move a friendly pet in or out of the way, feel free to do so. And then lay down. We'll rest for a few minutes in my timing. And I'll call you up and out when it's time to come up and out. If you know you need longer to rest than 4 or 5 minutes, then you might go ahead and click the video to pause right now so that you can set a different timer. If you know you need less time, you might do the same, knowing that you'll come out and fast forward to resolve with us if you wish. And here, as you settle down into rest, there might be a lot of accoutrement, a lot of things to shift around, a lot of wiggles and fixes. You might find you can come to rest right away. Close the eyes if it's available, or pick a spot to gaze at and get out your last fidgets and wiggles so you can settle down into gravity afterwards. Nothing to do, nowhere to go, no identities to uphold, no one to become. Just the open space for revelation, experience, attention, kindness, ease, truth, and space. I'll call you up when it's time to change. Until then, pay attention to how things really are. Sahana Vavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejastinavaditamastu Mavitvashavahai Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. If you're lying in rest and wish to remain as such, do. The time has come for you to begin to return. Go to your breath and ask it to slowly become a little bigger and longer, slower and deeper, purposeful. Ride the waves of your breath into any kind of movement you like in the body. Wiggle fingers and toes. Move the tongue over the teeth. Scrunch and hood your shoulders. Move your face around a little. You can start to stretch in any way that feels good, maybe rolling ankles and wrists, stretching out or up like rising from a nap. The next 5 or 6 rounds of breath, pick an exhale to gather your knees towards your chest and to roll onto your favorite side. Pause in the fetal position on the side body or another curled in shape. Take a moment to acknowledge process, to practice gratitude for the contributing factors that allow you to have access to this practice today. First and foremost, you might consider the earth that nourishes you, this evolutionary time on our planet in which human life has consciousness, is moving towards enlightenment in some way, enough that this practice is here and intended. You might consider the ancestors that came before yours and those of the land you occupy. I'm here on Samish Lumi land, the Straight Salish land in the San Juan Islands. You might consider the lineage from which yoga comes, this lineage all the way back to the far east of China and of India, southern India and northern India, contributing all throughout the continent, the country to this practice. You might consider the channels through which yoga has come to you, the teachers you've learned from, whether they be perfect or imperfect, whether they have knowledge of the lineage or not. You might consider your own willingness to show up and practice, the privileges that have allowed you to do so, the obstacles that have kept you from. You might consider how you might return the favor of humanity, what obstacles you can remove to the practice for others. When you're ready, begin to press yourself up to a nice tall seat, and we'll seal in the practice together. That's a traditional closing chant. Its overarching meaning is about our work together in learning community. A lot of teachers, I think, translate it to that of you and your teacher, you and your guru. I like the translation of you and your community, of you and your work. May we together, it means, be protected. May we together know joy and enjoyment. May our work together for the betterment and liberation of all be brilliant. And may our work seek always to give us perspective so that we do not hate, fight, or dispute amongst ourselves or with one another. May we always seek to turn our work towards universal and cosmic peace, peace, peace. If you wish, you can fold your hands in the Anjali Mudra, the symbol of non-dualism, the meeting place between what seems to be opposites, sun and moon, right and left, beginning and end, yin and yang. You and all the things you perceive as not you have a meeting place in the spectrum of everything where they become one. Thank you for your time, your energy, your effort, for allowing me to be a part of your work. If you wish, you can bring thumbs to the third eye, acknowledging the work of the mind, to bow to the intuition of the heart and the body. Bow to yourself, seal in your practice. Thank you again for being here, for practicing. This is a donation-based offering, sliding scale context. 10 to 25 is a nice way to think about it. That's often the pricing of yoga in the world. But no one's turned away for lack of funds in this particular context. Donate what you can. 50% of all proceeds for video offerings I'm creating for the rest of the month of July will go to the Black Trans Task Force, Washington. You can research them if you'd like. Their website is present, so the Lavender Rights Project access to figure out what's going on with their work. But I offer this yoga practice in solidarity with the movement of liberation that's happening in this country, with the movement of Black Lives Matter, and with the movements going on throughout the country to start to reveal the truth of how things are and to figure out how to really apply compassionate intelligence, kindness, openness, learning to those contexts, and how to unlearn for many of us. Thank you for the work you're doing. If you have questions, concerns, need to reach out to me, need to give me feedback, please feel free to. Right? Otherwise, take care, be well, and hopefully we can interact in this way and other ways again soon.